This is the new 2022 Acura NSX Type S, and it's the new high-performance version of Acura's NSX Supercar. The new NSX has been controversial ever since it first came out, but now it's going out of production, and it's going out with a bang, with a limited production high-performance version, the Type S. And today, I'm going to review it. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era, now with free listings. You can list your cool car for free and auction it on Cars and Bids. And we've had some fantastic sales recently on Cars and Bids, including this Ferrari 360 Spider beautiful car sold for $87,000. This gorgeous Porsche 997 Carrera S brought almost $43,000. And this wonderful Sprinter van sold for more than $74,000. We've done fantastically with adventure vans on Cars and Bids. Anyway, if you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it, with daily auctions and great selection at carsandbids.com. So let's talk NSX. Everybody knows the original Acura NSX, which came out in the early 1990s and was sold through 2005. A second generation model appeared in 2017, and it was controversial right from the start. No manual transmission, less of an analog feel than the old car. It had a hybrid powertrain and a big price tag. Sales have been pretty slow, with most enthusiasts instead focusing on well-established brands like Ferrari, Porsche, Lamborghini, and McLaren. And now the new NSX is going away. But before it does, Acura is ending production with this, the Type S, which is ultra limited to only 350 units for the entire planet. It also has more performance than the standard NSX. This has 600 horsepower and just under 500 pound-feet of torque. And it has a lot of other big changes over the regular NSX too. And today, I'll show you everything. First, I'll take you on a thorough tour of the new NSX and show you all of its interesting quirks and features. Then I'll get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'll give it a Doug's score. Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the NSX Type S by going over some of the upgrades and differences for the Type S compared to the regular NSX we've known over the last 6 years. And it starts before you even get inside with the key. Now, on the front it just looks like a normal Acura key, although I do like that you have a little NSX graphic for the trunk opener instead of a generic car. That makes you feel special, but you feel even more special when you flip it over and you can see not only does it say NSX, but it also says Type S. You don't even get just a regular NSX key if you get the Type S. You get the real deal Type S key. Now, to be totally honest, I'm surprised they badged the key with Type S, because this car doesn't really have that many Type S badges aside from that one. The primary one you'll find is here. In front of the rear wheel, there's a little decal that says Type S, and you can see that appears on both sides, driver and passenger. You get your Type S decal there, but that is pretty much it in terms of Type S badging for this car. The only other badge you can really see is this plaque mounted on the engine cover. You can see it through the rear window, and it gives the individual number of your NSX Type S. The regular NSX doesn't have that. Now, this plaque is an interesting thing with the Type S. You can see this one is numbered 0 out of 0 because this car isn't part of the regular Type S production run. This is the press car that Acura is keeping for themselves. But all the other models will be numbered out of 350 because that is the total production for this car. 350 units for the entire world, which works out to 300 for the United States and 50 for other countries, which Acura told me is just Canada and Japan. And it's worth noting that that 350 unit production run is another difference between this car and the regular NSX, because all 2022 NSX models will be Type S's. You can't get a standard NSX anymore. If you get a 22, it's a Type S, and then production is going to end. So that's the end. Now, pricing for this car will start start around $172,000 with shipping, which is pretty expensive. And if you choose this color, it's even more expensive. This is called Gotham Gray. There's only going to be 70 of these in this color, and it costs an extra $6,000 in addition to that incredibly high sticker price. So if you want this special color, you're going to be paying. But anyway, next up, I want to go through some other exterior changes for the NSX Type S, and probably the most obvious one is up front, where you have a totally redesigned front fascia, front splitter compared to the standard NSX. It's more aggressive, it's bolder, you can see it almost looks like a C8 front end. It's kind of more modern, and it comes with several big changes in addition to just looking different. One is the placement of the Acura badge. Previously, it was on this front hood panel a little bit higher up, but now it's been moved to the front fascia itself, so that'll be an easy way to tell Type S models apart when you see them on the street, where the Acura badge is located. Now, another big difference in the front end of the Type S model is that all the openings up here have been enlarged for improved cooling. Some of the openings have been enlarged to help cool the electric motors, which are right here in front. Some have been enlarged to help cool the brakes, and some have even been enlarged to help channel air to the intercoolers, which are mounted in back. Because of the way they designed this, air flows out of the front a certain way and hits those intercoolers and helps add additional cooling compared to the regular NSX. So you do have some performance benefits from this more aggressive front end. Now, one other item you will notice on this front fascia is the carbon fiber. Around basically the entire lower part of it, it's all carbon fiber. And carbon is kind of a theme on the outside of this car because all NSX Type S models come standard with the carbon package that was previously optional on the regular NSX. So that includes the carbon fiber on the front splitter. It also includes carbon fiber trim here on the rocker panels on the side of the car, which looks pretty cool. You also have a carbon fiber roof panel. You can see here, not painted in body color, but carbon fiber for lighter weight. And you have this large carbon fiber spoiler in back that is standard on the Type S, optional on regular NSX models with the carbon package, but standard here and very noticeable. And finally, the last bit of notable carbon on the outside of this car is on the rear diffuser. You can see it here along the bottom, and you can also see that the rear diffuser is far more aggressive than what you get on the standard NSX. Just like the front fascia of the Type S was redesigned for a more aggressive look, the same is true back here. You have a more aggressive, bolder look that Acura tells me also happens to improve downforce for the car. So it looks cooler and it has a performance benefit. Acura also says that this rear diffuser was modeled after the one in the NSX GT3 race car, so you have kind of a little bit more of that race car look on the outside of the Type S. But while the rear diffuser is very notable and it looks very cool, I don't want to get past the carbon stuff just yet because this car has some more carbon in the form of a lightweight package that's an option on the Type S model. This car has the lightweight package and it includes carbon ceramic brakes. You can see here this car has carbon ceramics. It also has a carbon engine cover. You can see all the trim around the engine is in carbon fiber and it looks very cool and sporty. And the lightweight package also includes some carbon fiber interior trim, and you can mainly see that like on the steering wheel here and also on this hood over the gauge cluster, a little bit of interior carbon fiber. Now, this lightweight package costs $13,000 extra, so it is a big expense, but it's probably going to be something most people who buy this car are going to want to get, since this is the performance version and the lightweight package enhances the performance. But anyway, a couple of other interesting changes around back to the NSX Type S. One is the badging. You can see the Acura badge is black. Acura tells me this is the first time they have ever put black badges on one of their cars from the factory. Other Type S models have had black accents, but the badges have always been chromed, but now they are black to distinguish the NSX Type S. Another little cosmetic detail on the engine, you can see this red panel on the engine cover. That, Acura says, is a hallmark of Honda and Acura performance vehicles. They've always had like a red streak on the engine in one place or another, and so they've added that here to fit in line with these other high-performance Hondas and Acuras. But anyway, next up, speaking of the engine, let's talk engine. The new NSX is a hybrid, of course. That's been part of the controversy surrounding this car. The gasoline engine component is a twin-turbo V6. Now, in the regular NSX, just the gas V6 made 500 horsepower. In this car, it makes 520, so there's a power boost to the gas powertrain. Acura tells me that comes from larger turbochargers, which are literally taken from the GT3 race car. They said it's the exact same part number, plus some other little tweaks like increased boost and larger injectors help give the gas engine its additional power. Now, the electric motor received a few tweaks also to help increase its output as well, and the result is 600 horsepower combined for this powertrain, gas and electric. 600 horses, which is up 27 horsepower compared to the outgoing NSX. You also have an increase in torque. This has about 500 pound-feet, just a little less, which is about 15 pound-feet more than the outgoing model. So Type S, in addition to all the other upgrades, does indeed have more power and more torque. And of course, that translates to better acceleration. Acura doesn't quote 0 to 60 figures, they told me, but the prior model was said to do 0 to 60 in around 2.9 seconds. Acura says this should be a couple of tenths faster, so think 2.7 seconds 0 to 60 for the NSX Type S. That is pretty quick. But anyway, next we're inside the car, and I want to go over the Type S distinctive items in here, starting with a lot of different red accents. You can see red stitching on the door panel right here. You can also see red stitching on the dashboard throughout to make the car look sportier, and red stitching on the center console, of course. Again, all this stuff is distinctive just to the Type S model. Now, the red theme continues on the seats, where you can see a lot of red trim. Not just stitching, but also nice panels of red leather, which look very good, very attractive in this car. And you have NSX embroidered in the seats and the headrest part in red, also distinctive to the Type S and also looks pretty cool. And one other item worth pointing out, unique to the Type S, red seat belts. You can see them here. They are red, they look sporty, and they give this interior a slightly sportier feel than a standard NSX. The other big thing you notice when you drive this car, the shifts are quicker. Acura tells me quicker shifting transmission in the Type S model, and there's a new feature in the Type S where you can pull the left paddle. If you pull it and hold it, the car will automatically downshift to the lowest possible gear, so you don't have to downshift through each gear individually. The car will just do it all at once, which is a cool thing to have for quick acceleration situations. But anyway, aside from all the Type S upgrades in here, there are a lot of quirks and features to discuss in this interior, some good, some bad. One of the good is the gauge cluster situation. You can see when you turn this car on, it starts in sport mode and the gauges just look sporty. They look cool, they look high performance-y with that big center gauge, the tachometer, everything just looks cool in that gauge cluster, and it gets even cooler when you go into other drive modes. Now to do that, you have this gigantic drive mode dial in the center. It says dynamic mode, and you can twist that to go through your drive modes. You twist it from sport to the right and go into sport plus, and take a look what happens to the gauge cluster. It gets redder, it gets more aggressive, and it sort of realigns the numbers on the tachometer in order to provide more gauges, more temperature displays, so you can see what's going on in sport plus. Now, there's also another further dynamic mode, which is called track. To activate that, you twist the dynamic mode dial and hold it for like 5 seconds, and then eventually the car goes into track mode. Now, when you get there, you can see the stability control has turned off. That warning light pops on in the gauge cluster to let you know, and also your center infotainment screen has turned off. Acura figures if you're in track mode, you want to be super focused on track driving. You don't need to worry about what's in your center screen, and so that goes away when you're in track mode, which is a pretty crazy thing. But it might also be for the best that infotainment screen turns off, because frankly, the infotainment system in this car is unquestionably its biggest drawback and its biggest disappointment. When the new NSX first came out back in 2017, this infotainment system was already getting criticized for feeling outdated, and frankly, here we are 6 years later, and now it just feels ancient. Obviously, the biggest complaint a lot of people have is the volume control. They ditched a traditional volume knob, but instead you have this little slider that you slide your finger over to raise or lower the volume. It works okay, but it's obviously not traditional and not the most desirable way to do this, and most automakers have ditched systems like this, but not this one. However, this infotainment system's disappointments go well beyond just that volume slider. How about the navigation screen, which truly looks looks like something from a cheap Garmin nav system you would buy and mount on your dashboard in the early 2000s. It is absolutely goofy looking, cheap, cartoonish, and not particularly high quality given the price point of this car. It's just a total disappointment. And how about the backup camera? You put it in reverse and this is your backup camera quality. Gotta be one of the worst quality backup cameras in the entire car industry. And here it is on a tremendously expensive supercar known for compromised visibility, where you want your camera to be fantastic. That's it. And that's the only angle you get. So many other supercars now have 360-degree top-down cameras, but not the NSX, just one poor resolution camera. And there are still more problems with the center screen. How about the fact that it is laggy? You touch anything and it slowly does what you want. It really does remind you of an infotainment system from 7 years ago, because frankly, that's what it is. And another drawback, some of the climate functions are integrated into this screen. You have to tap this button with the rest of the climate controls to pull up, for instance, your fan speed adjuster. That's only accessible in the screen. And same deal with the adjustment for where the airflow comes out of the vents. You got to do that in the screen. You can't do that using hard climate controls. So not only is it slow, laggy, and outdated, but it also integrates some of the climate features, which isn't really desirable. Now, one benefit in this area is it doesn't integrate all of the climate features. So you do have some climate control functions controlled with hard buttons that you can just push without going into the screen, and that's nice. And one of those controls is the heated seat. You can see that's here, this tiny little standalone button. You just tap it to turn on the heated seat. You don't have to go into some laggy menu in the screen, which is nice to see. So that is one benefit of the controls in here. Anyway, moving on to the rest of the quirks and features in this interior. One is definitely the gear selector in this car, which is standard on other Acura models, but unfamiliar to those of us who haven't spent a lot of time in Acuras. Accessing all the gears is done with these buttons and switches in a line. You can see P, obviously that is park. To get into reverse, it's like a switch you pull towards you, and that activates reverse. Then neutral is a button again, and then drive is a circle button below neutral. You can see it's marked D/M because you can press it to go into drive automatic mode, or M for manual mode, and you can use the shift pedals. So kind of an odd gear selector situation, but par for the course for modern Acuras. Now, interestingly, that theme is continued to the rest of this interior, which is sort of a weird mix of like high performance supercar and modern regular Acura other stuff. For example, the steering wheel is this carbon fiber trimmed wheel that isn't a full circle. It's sort of flat on the top and bottom like you'd find in a race car. And yet the turn signal and wiper stalks are just borrowed from an RDX or an MDX. It's not really a problem since Acura makes high quality parts, but it's kind of funny to see this combination of like supercar and family crossover in one throughout this interior. Now, I will say one nice trait borrowed from other Acura models is excellent visibility. Supercars, like I said earlier, are known for their compromised visibility, but not this car. You look in the rearview mirror and you have a pretty good field of vision behind you, which is nice. It's part of what comes from getting a supercar from a normal brand like Acura. But anyway, one other area where I noticed a bit of a disappointment in this interior, in addition to the infotainment system, there are some other spots where this cabin is kind of starting to show its age. For example, this car doesn't have adaptive cruise control, just regular cruise. You can't like speed up and slow down based on the car in front of you. That is somewhat forgivable considering that this is a supercar, but it's also intended to be kind of a daily drivable supercar, and most modern cars have that. It would be nice to have in here, but you don't get it. You also don't get visor mirrors in this car, which is kind of strange. Maybe supercars could have gotten away with that when this came out, but now it just seems like a weird omission. And you don't have a wireless charging pad in here. You do in so many other cars, but not this one. In fact, there's only one USB port in the center console. You can see, lift up this lid and it's located here. You do have a second one, but it's in the glove box, which isn't a very usable, reachable place, and that's kind of disappointing too. Fortunately, you do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which makes using your devices in this interior a little bit easier, but still disappointing. No charging pad, and the USB ports are kind of out of the way. And one other kind of disappointment with this car, there's no axle lifter system for the front end to raise it up. Basically, all new supercars and exotic sports cars have a front axle lifter to help clear driveways, but not this one, which is especially disappointing in the Type S because you now have this larger, more aggressive front fascia with carbon fiber at the very bottom. You're nervous about scraping it. Well, there's no button you can push to raise an axle lifter. It's just kind of a disappointing omission on this car. car. But anyway, since I'm talking about the front end of this car, let's get under here and see what's going on. Now, to open up this front hood, there's a little latch on the driver's footwell. Interestingly, it's mounted on the floor, not like below the dashboard like most cars, but you pull that and then the front pops open and there's a little release right here. And you can lift it up and you see, well, mechanical components under here. You do not have a cargo space in the front of this car. It's all mechanical, primarily stuff for the electric motors. The hybrid system in this car is up front, so you do have access to it and pretty easy access, but you can't store stuff under here, no cargo area. But anyway, since you don't have an engine or a cargo area up front, all the good stuff, the stuff you'll want to access, is back here. Now, there are two ways to get back here. One is this little button on the driver door panel. You can see an NSX with the rear panel raised up, which is kind of cool. You press that and it pops open. Or you can press a similar button on the key fob, like I showed you earlier, same deal, NSX with the back open. You push that, as I am doing now, and then this releases and you can open it right up. And you can see when you do that, you have the engine and you have a little storage area back here, the trunk for the NSX. Now, I already talked powertrain engine a little bit earlier, so let's talk cargo area, which you can see is reasonably large. It's not huge, but there's decent space back here for storage, which is kind of nice. One interesting thing about this cargo area, there is a bump in it, sort of in the middle on the floor. Actually, it's a little offset to the left, that bump. It's not just the carpet, it's actually in there. I suspect some mechanical component needed to take up that space, so the load floor in the trunk isn't flat, which is kind of unusual, a little bit quirky, you might say. But anyway, since I'm out here, let's talk through another interesting exterior quirk of this car, and that would be the door handles, which are indeed kind of strange. You can see right now they're flush up against the car, and that means that the car is locked. When you unlock the car, you can see, press the unlock button, the door handles pop out, and then you can grab them, pull on them, and open up the door. Now, interestingly, there's a little button next to the door handle. You can see it here. If you push that, it locks the doors, but that same button will not unlock the doors. It only has the function of locking them. Now, the car is supposed to unlock the doors when you walk up to it with the key in your pocket. You don't push anything, it just recognizes you're coming and it unlocks the doors, but I noticed that doesn't really always work all the time. So sometimes you actually have to take your key out of your pocket and press the unlock button to unlock the doors. Kind of an interesting door handle locking situation. And since I'm out here, let's talk NSX Type S a little bit in general. First, styling. This is a beautiful car. It always was when it came out in 17, even now it is a beautiful supercar, very attractive, it looks great, it's aging well, and it still is a gorgeous car. And I think the Type S improvements only make it a little bit more focused and a little bit more sporty, and they keep the same basic, beautiful look it's always had. It really always was a nice looking design. But that wasn't enough to get people to buy it. Acura told me that they only made about 2,900 NSX models during its entire production run, including the Type S. Now, that makes this car rarer than the 0506 Ford GT. This is an exceptionally uncommon car, and the Type S is the most uncommon of them all. It's really, really rare, and I predict it's gonna be desirable and valuable someday, even though right now enthusiasts don't really see it that way. The criticism of this car was it doesn't really follow up on the original NSX. It doesn't have that analog feel, the manual transmission. Instead, you have the hybrid, the automatic, the high price tag. People complained about it, but with only 2,900 of these built, and given the performance numbers, the styling, I suspect someday people will change their tune about this car and it will become really a car to have. Now, one other thing worth mentioning here is Type S. I asked Acura, why didn't you call it Type R? Because that would make it more desirable and enhance the appeal, and they told me it's because they're trying to make Type S happen with their other models. There's a TLX Type S and MDX Type S is coming out, and they wanted to tie that in. Now, they didn't tell me, but I also think their feeling is that Type R is more of a Honda thing. They have the Civic Type R, and so that's a Honda thing. Type S is more restrained, a more luxurious term, and so Acura. There will be no Type R version. This is the end of the line for the NSX. And so those are the quirks and features of the new 2022 Acura NSX. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see how it drives. All right, driving the new NSX Type S. I love this car. I want to make this point clear. I reviewed this car 5 years ago. and I said it was good, and I got so much crap for it. I got so much flack. I still remember the fallout of that. All these people, I was new in the car review world, and all these people were like, Motor Trend says it's bad, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't have any experience. It was one of my first reviews that got really popular of a new car, and I was absolutely taken to the shredder for my opinion that this is a pretty good car. Well, guess what? It's 5 years later, I still think this is a pretty good car. And the market is starting to agree with me. These cars dropped way down in value and they have started to come back up. Now, everything has come back up in value these days. But I suspect that this car is going to go down as a pretty good one. Now, there's a couple reasons that I think it's sort of been appreciated a little bit more. One is, when this car came out, having a hybrid supercar was sort of a new thing, and people weren't really sure what to think about it. Now, more and more exotic cars have gone hybrid or a fully electric, and this isn't as crazy as it once was to have that. At the time, it was seen as sort of a weakness, but now it's like a lot of cars have this. Another reason that this car is good, and something I've always loved about it is just plain fast. I'm sorry, but 2.7 seconds 0 to 60. This car's probably sticking around $200,000. That ain't so bad. If you look at Huracan and all those, this car is kind of a bargain, and it's beautiful. Now, I want to talk specifically about Type S. I haven't driven a new NSX since that review, 5 years, and I didn't know. I kind of forgot how it was, but I got to tell you, I love how this car drives. It handles fantastically. The sound is great. Some of that is fake sound that's piped in. I don't care. It sounds good. It sounds fast. It sounds fun, because it is. And here's the other thing about this car. They made 2,900 of them. I cannot say this enough. That's like a quarter of a regular Ferrari V8 mid-engine car production run. That's less than the Ford GT. That's only double the F40. This is a rare car, and the Type S is obviously the rarest one, and it's going to be the one to have. Now, I will say, I just had a go in the Maserati MC20. I spent a few days with that car. It was great. I think it handled better at the limit, and I also think that the F8 and the Huracan handle better at the limit than even the MC20. So this isn't quite on those cars' level. I don't think this is a true direct Huracan competitor. I don't think this is a true F8 competitor, but this car tops out at 200 grand. An F8 starts at 280. 350 is not crazy on an F8 when it's fully equipped or well equipped. This car is a pretty damn good value for the money in the world of the supercar, and it still looks good, and it still drives well, and it's reliable. People put miles on these. It is usable. It's comfortable in here. I have space for my legs, my knees, my head. I have good visibility. This is a drivable, good car. Now, obviously, there are some drawbacks. Like I said, at the limit, handling not that great. Infotainment is not good. It's not even not that great. It's not good. Even compared to like Italian car rivals, it's bad. Ferrari does better with infotainment. Other than that, I don't see any real problems with this car except for, of course, the badge. It shifts quickly. It has the cool gauge cluster screen, which looks awesome when you go between gears. Downshifts are fast. The sound is good. The acceleration is great. Steering and handling is really good. Now, I say this as someone who has not been incredibly kind, generally speaking, to Honda products over the last few years. The cars are only really desirable because they're reliable. Otherwise, they're boring. They don't take risks. But this car isn't that. It's so good. I think the NSX is a great car. I think the Type S is a really cool version of it, and I think someday people will really come around and appreciate these as the great cars that I've always thought they were. And so that's the new Acura NSX Type S. This is a special car, and I have always felt that the new NSX is underrated in the supercar world, and I suspect that the Type S will be especially desirable as time goes on. It was cool to check this car out. It's a thrilling drive, and now it's time to give the new NSX Type S a DOUGSCORE.
And the DOUGSCORE is here, 68 out of 100, which places the NSX Type S here against some modern supercar rivals, tied with the Porsche 911 GT3 and just behind the McLaren 720S. I got a lot of hate years ago when I praised the original new NSX, and I feel like the same is coming this time too, but I think people are wrong about this car. It's rare, it's exceptionally fast, it looks cool, and this is the swan song model, the S2000 CR of the NSX range, which will surely be highly coveted someday. Cabin technology is bad and the brand name isn't much better, but this is a special car, and I was impressed by the Type S.
Ba 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 ba. Woo! Ah! Rah!